You will comply with the crew's instructions immediately, or you will be removed from this aircraft.
What would you do if the seat you paid thousands for was taken right in front of you, and no one on that plane believed it was ever yours to begin with? The man stood frozen in the aisle, one hand gripping the worn leather handle of his carry-on, the other tightening slowly into a fist. Conversations softened, eyes lifted, a silence thin and sharp stretched across the first-class cabin like a wire ready to snap. But that moment hadn't started there. It had started hours earlier under the dry Arizona sun. Ethan Brooks moved through Phoenix Sky Harbor like a man carrying too much weight no one could see. 42 years old, clean-cut, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He didn't check it, not this time. Not after a week where every call had demanded something, taken something, chipped away at whatever silence he had left. He walked slower than most, not lost, observing. A couple argued near the departure board, their voices tight, clipped. A young man in a wrinkled suit typed furiously on his laptop, jaw clenched, chasing a deadline that didn't care about him. A mother bounced a crying toddler on her hip, whispering promises she couldn't guarantee. Ethan noticed everything. He always had. It was how he learned early on who people really were when no one thought they were being watched. He reached the Delta Lounge and stepped inside. Quiet, controlled, soft lighting, the kind of place where problems were supposed to stay outside the door. A bartender glanced up. "What can I get you, sir?" "Black coffee," Ethan said, voice low, steady. No hesitation, no small talk. He took a seat by the window. Planes moved in slow choreography outside, engines humming like distant thunder. He wrapped both hands around the warm cup, but didn't drink. For a moment, just a moment, he allowed himself to feel the stillness. Then his mind went back to work. Contracts, negotiations, a boardroom full of men who had smiled at him while quietly questioning if he belonged there. He had seen it in their eyes, heard it in the pauses between their words. They didn't say it out loud anymore. They didn't have to. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had earned every inch of where he stood, built his company from nothing, long nights, empty apartments, missed holidays. He didn't inherit power. He took it, piece by piece, from a system that wasn't designed to hand it over. A notification lit up his screen. Breaking news, another airline apology, overbooking, mistakes, systems failing people. Ethan let out a quiet breath through his nose. They never learn. 10 minutes later, his boarding alert chimed. At the gate, the energy shifted. People crowded forward too early, pressing into lines they hadn't been called for, eyes darting, restless, control breaking down in small, familiar ways. That's when he saw her. Victoria Hale stood near the front, posture straight, chin slightly raised. Late 40s, polished, controlled, the kind of presence that expected the world to adjust around it. She tapped her phone, then her foot, impatience leaking through her otherwise composed exterior. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't have to. Ethan noticed the way others moved subtly out of her space without realizing it. That quiet entitlement, that assumption of priority. He said nothing, just watched. When his group was finally called, Ethan stepped forward, handed over his boarding pass, and walked down the jet bridge. No rush, no hesitation. Seat 2A. Window. His seat. He had chosen it for a reason. Not luxury, not status. Control. A small, controlled space in a world that constantly tried to take it away from him. But control, Ethan Brooks would soon learn, is the first thing people try to strip from you right before they decide you were never supposed to have it at all.
The moment Ethan stepped into the aircraft, something felt off. Not loud, not obvious, just Wrong. The air in first class carried that usual polished calm, soft lighting, muted conversations, the faint clink of glassware. But beneath it, there was tension, subtle, tight, like a room where something had already happened before you arrived. Ethan moved down the aisle, slow, controlled, his carry-on rolling quietly behind him. Row 1, then row 2. He stopped. Seat 2A. Occupied. Victoria Hale sat there like she had always belonged. Her handbag rested neatly beside her, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of sparkling water balanced lightly in her hand. She didn't look surprised, didn't look uncertain. She looked settled, like the story had already been written and Ethan was late to it. For half a second he didn't move. Not confusion, recognition. He had seen this before. Different room, different stakes, same energy. Ethan stepped forward, voice calm, even. "Excuse me, I think you're in my seat." Victoria glanced up slowly, eyes scanning him in one quick pass. Shoes, jeans, polo. No hesitation, no apology, just a small, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No," she said lightly, "I'm in 2A." Ethan didn't blink. "That's my seat." A man across the aisle shifted, lowering his newspaper just enough to watch. A woman behind Ethan leaned slightly into the aisle, curiosity pulling her forward. The cabin was quiet, but attention was spreading. Victoria lifted her phone, tilting it toward him without actually offering it. "It says 2A right here." Ethan leaned in just enough to see. 3C. Clear as day. He straightened, voice still controlled. "That says 3C, middle seat." For a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Then it disappeared, replaced by something firmer, colder. "No, it doesn't," she replied, almost amused. "I always sit in 2A." The word always hung in the air like a claim to ownership. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger, not yet. Something older than that, something familiar. Seats don't belong to people. Systems assign them. Money confirms them. But power rewrites them. "I paid for this seat," Ethan said quietly. "It's assigned to me." Victoria crossed her arms, phone still in hand. Then maybe they made a mistake. She gestured casually toward the back. "You can just take mine." The words landed heavier than she intended, or maybe exactly as intended. A low murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "That's not how it works." Another voice, softer, unbelievable. Ethan didn't turn, didn't acknowledge them. His focus stayed locked on her. He had been here before. Boardrooms where his voice was questioned before he spoke. Deals where his authority had to be proven twice as hard, twice as long. Rooms where people smiled at him while quietly deciding he didn't belong at the table. This was smaller, petty even, but it wasn't about the seat. It never is. Ethan adjusted to grip on the handle of his bag, grounding himself. His voice dropped slightly, firmer now. "Ma'am, I'm not taking your seat. I'm taking mine." Victoria's smile thinned. Her posture shifted, shoulders tightening, chin lifting just a little higher. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." There it was. Not a request, a correction. Around them, the cabin had gone still. Conversations had stopped completely now. Phones weren't out yet, but eyes were locked in, watching, measuring, waiting to see which version of reality would win. Ethan held her gaze, calm, unmoving. "No," he said, "I'm not." A beat passed, then another, and somewhere near the front of the cabin, heels clicked sharply against the floor. Someone was coming. Not to help, to decide. The sound of those heels was precise, controlled, and just a little too fast. Lauren Mitchell appeared from the galley with a professional smile already in place, the kind trained to smooth over problems before they became visible. Early 30s, perfect posture, uniform, crisp, but her eyes moved first, scanning the scene, calculating before she spoke. Is there a problem here?" Her tone was warm, but not neutral, not yet. Victoria answered before Ethan could. "Yes, there is. I'm being told I'm in the wrong seat." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. There was a quiet authority in the way she spoke, like someone used to being believed first. Lauren turned slightly toward her, body angling just enough to signal alignment. "Let me take a look at your boarding pass, ma'am." Victoria handed over her phone with a soft exhale, like the situation itself was beneath her. "I already showed him." Lauren glanced down. 3C. Her smile didn't drop, but it tightened at the edges. A pause, small but noticeable. Ethan saw it, that flicker, that moment where truth and choice separate. Lauren lifted her head. "Okay, it looks like your assigned seat is 3C. For a second, the tension eased, just a fraction. Then Victoria didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head, studying Lauren with a look that wasn't aggressive, but carried weight, expectation, pressure, the kind that doesn't need words. "That can't be right," she said softly. "I booked first class weeks ago. I always sit near the front." Lauren nodded, still smiling, but slower now. "Yes, ma'am, 3C is still in first class." "That's not the point," Victoria replied, her voice cooling. "This is my seat." There it was again. Not confusion, claim. Lauren hesitated, and in that hesitation, the entire cabin shifted. Ethan felt it, the balance tilting, not based on facts, not based on tickets, something else, something older. Lauren turned to him then. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" Ethan handed it over without a word. 2A. Clear. Confirmed. Lauren scanned it, then looked between them again. Her smile remained, but her eyes had changed, less certain, more careful. Behind Ethan, someone whispered, "It's obvious." Another voice, sharper, "Why is this even a discussion?" Lauren heard them. Of course she did, but she didn't respond. Instead, she stepped slightly closer to Ethan, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel private, but not enough that others couldn't still hear. "Sir, would you be willing to take another seat for now while we sort this out?" The words landed like a quiet slap. Ethan didn't react immediately, didn't move, didn't blink, just looked at her. "Another seat," he repeated. Lauren kept her tone gentle, just temporarily. Victoria said nothing, but her silence was loud, confident, assured. Ethan let out a slow breath through his nose. He had seen this play before, the polite redirection, the subtle suggestion that peace mattered more than fairness, that the easiest solution was for him to move, because people like him were expected to. He leaned in slightly, voice low, controlled, but now carrying weight. "With respect," he said, "there's nothing to sort out. That's my seat." Lauren's smile flickered again. "I understand, sir, but we're just trying to keep things moving smoothly for all passengers." Smooth, efficient, quiet, words that often meant the same thing. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Ethan straightened, his presence shifting almost imperceptibly, not louder, not aggressive, just solid. "I'm not moving." The words cut clean through the cabin. A man across the aisle nodded slowly. A woman 2 rows back murmured, "Good." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line, her patience cracking just slightly. Lauren's posture stiffened, the calculation in her eyes deepened, because now this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a choice, and whatever she decided next, everyone would see it. Lauren's smile didn't disappear. It hardened. For a brief second, she looked past Ethan, not at anything specific, just away, like she needed distance from the decision forming in her mind. Then she came back, professional, controlled, decided. "Sir," she said, voice still calm, but now carrying a quiet firmness, "I'm asking for your cooperation." Not requesting, not suggesting, asking. Ethan caught the shift instantly. So did everyone else. A man in seat 1C leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, watching with open interest now. A woman near the window behind them pulled her phone halfway out of her bag, hesitating. Not recording yet, but ready. Victoria adjusted in the seat, just a small movement, crossing her legs tighter, settling deeper into 2A like roots were growing beneath her. Ethan didn't move. Cooperation would be her moving, he said, nodding lightly toward Victoria, not me giving up what I paid for. Lauren inhaled, slow and measured. Her eyes flicked toward Victoria again, just for a fraction of a second. Victoria met that look without blinking. It wasn't confrontation, it was expectation, and Lauren felt it. The kind of pressure that doesn't come from authority on paper, but from years of learned behavior. Who gets questioned, who gets accommodated, who gets moved. Lauren turned back to Ethan. "Sir, we need to avoid delaying this flight." There it was, the escalation. Not about seats anymore, about time, about inconvenience, about making him the problem. Ethan's jaw tightened just slightly. Then she should move. Victoria let out a soft laugh, not loud, not kind, just enough to be heard. "This is ridiculous," she said, shaking her head. "You're holding up an entire plane over a seat." The words slid into the cabin like poison. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. One man muttered, "He's not the one in the wrong." Another voice, quieter, "This is getting out of hand." But no one stood, no one intervened. Not yet. Lauren straightened her shoulders. The softness in her tone began to fade. Not gone, but thinner now, like something stretched too far. "Sir," she said again, more direct this time, "if you do not comply, I may need to escalate this situation." Ethan looked at her, really looked. Not at the uniform, not at the smile, at the choice, at the line she was about to cross. "You're escalating it," he said quietly, "not me." Silence, heavy, thick. Lauren's lips pressed together for a brief moment before she spoke again. "I'm trying to resolve it." "No," Ethan replied, "you're trying to move me." That landed hard. Victoria shifted again, impatience now visible. "Can we please just move on?" she said, louder this time. "Some of us have places to be." The entitlement in her voice cracked through whatever neutrality remained. And now people were watching openly. A man in row 3 shook his head. Unbelievable. A woman across the aisle whispered, "This isn't right." Lauren heard all of it, every word, every shift, and it boxed her in. Because now the cabin wasn't just waiting for a solution, it was watching for a verdict. Lauren reached for the interphone at the front of the cabin, her movements precise, controlled. She pressed a button, her voice dropping into something quieter, more official. "Captain, I need assistance in first class." The word assistance echoed louder than it should have. Victoria leaned back slightly, a small, satisfied exhale escaping her lips. Ethan didn't react, but inside, something locked into place. This was no longer about a misunderstanding. This was about authority, about who got to decide what was true and who got removed when they refused to accept it. From the cockpit, the door opened, and the man stepping out wasn't coming to understand. He was coming to enforce.
Captain Robert Hayes stepped into the aisle like a man used to ending problems, not listening to them. Mid-50s, tall, silver at the temples. The kind of presence that carried authority before he said a single word. Conversations didn't just quiet when he appeared, they stopped. His eyes moved quickly. Lauren first, then Victoria, then Ethan. Assessment, judgment, order of belief. "What's going on?" he asked, voice steady, controlled, already leaning toward resolution. Lauren spoke immediately. "Seat assignment conflict, sir. This passenger," a slight gesture toward Ethan, "is refusing to relocate so we can resolve it." Not a lie, but not the truth. Ethan heard the framing, so did a few others. Victoria didn't say anything at first. She didn't need to. She sat there, composed, chin slightly raised, letting the situation present itself in her favor. Captain Hayes turned to Ethan. "Sir," he said, tone firm but not yet hostile, "I need you to explain what the issue is." Ethan met his gaze without hesitation. "There is no issue. That's my seat. She's in it. She won't move." Short, clean, direct. Hayes nodded once, then turned to Victoria. "Ma'am?" Victoria let out a soft breath, like she had already gone through this too many times. "I'm in 2A. I booked first class weeks ago. I always sit here." Always. Again. Hayes glanced at Lauren. "Boarding passes?" Lauren handed them over. He looked at Victoria's first. 3C. Then Ethan's. 2A. The answer was right there. Clear. Simple. For a moment it seemed like this would end, but Hayes didn't speak. He looked at Victoria again, then at Ethan. His eyes lingered just a fraction longer this time, not on the ticket, on him. Clothes, posture, presence, and something shifted. He handed the passes back slowly. "All right," he said, drawing the word out slightly. "Here's what we're going to do." The cabin leaned in. Ethan felt it before the words came, that familiar tightening, that instinct that told him the decision had already been made. "Sir," Hayes said, turning fully toward him now, "I'm going to need you to take another seat so we can get this flight out on time." There it was. Not a suggestion, a ruling. A few passengers reacted immediately, a sharp inhale, a whispered, "Are you serious?" Someone else, louder, "That's not right." Victoria didn't move, but the corner of her mouth lifted, just slightly. Ethan stood still, completely still. "You've seen the tickets," he said, voice low, controlled. "You know that's my seat." Hayes's expression didn't change. "I'm aware of what the tickets say." "Then why am I the one moving?" The question cut through the air, sharper than anything said so far. Hayes exhaled slowly, like he'd been here before. "Because right now, you're the one refusing to comply with crew instructions." The words landed heavier than they sounded. Refusing to comply. Not defending his seat, not standing his ground, refusing. The language had shifted, and with it, the narrative. Ethan felt something rise in his chest, not anger, something colder, something clearer. "You're asking me to give up what I paid for," he said, "because it's easier than asking her to move?" Hayes's jaw tightened just slightly. "I'm asking you to cooperate so we can avoid further disruption." Disruption, another word, another label. Ethan let out a slow breath. Around him, the cabin had changed. No longer quiet observation. Now it was tension, division, people choosing sides without speaking. A man across the aisle shook his head openly now. "This is wrong." A woman 2 rows back said louder, "You showed him the ticket." Lauren stood still, silent, watching. Victoria adjusted her sleeve, smoothing it down with calm precision, like the outcome was already settled. Hayes took a small step closer to Ethan. "Sir," he said, voice dropping, harder now, "this is your final request. Move to another seat, or I will have to involve ground security." The words hit like a switch. Everything sharpened, every sound, every breath, every eye in the room. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break, because now it wasn't just about a seat. It was about what happens when authority decides the truth doesn't matter. And in that moment, Ethan Brooks made his own decision. He wasn't going anywhere.
The first sound was the shuffle of the word security changed everything. It didn't raise the volume in the cabin, it lowered it. Conversations died completely. The kind of silence that doesn't mean calm, but consequence. Ethan felt every set of eyes on him now, not curious anymore, waiting to see if he would break. Captain Hayes held his ground, shoulders squared, authority fully in place now. Lauren stood just behind him, hands clasped, her face neutral but tight. Victoria remained seated in 2A, still, composed, as if this outcome had been inevitable from the start. Ethan slowly set his carry-on upright beside him, deliberate, controlled. He looked at Hayes, not with defiance, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous: clarity. "So let me understand this," Ethan said, voice even, cutting clean through the silence. "I have a valid ticket. You've seen it. You know this is my seat." Hayes didn't respond. "You're asking me to give it up anyway," Ethan continued, "because she refuses to move." Victoria shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "I'm not refusing," she said. "I'm in my seat." Ethan didn't look at her. His focus stayed on Hayes. "And if I don't," he said, "you're going to call security and remove me." Hayes nodded once. "Yes, sir." No hesitation, no apology, just procedure. Ethan let the words settle, let everyone hear them. Behind him, a man spoke up, louder now. "That's not right, Captain. He showed you his ticket." A woman across the aisle added, "You're removing the wrong person." Hayes didn't turn, didn't acknowledge them. His attention stayed locked on Ethan. Because this wasn't about the cabin anymore. It was about control. "Sir," Hayes said, voice firm, "I need your decision." Decision, as if this were a choice. Ethan exhaled slowly. His heartbeat had steadied, his breathing even. Years of boardrooms, negotiations, moments where everything depended on staying calm while others tried to push him out, taught him this: never react too fast, never give them the version of you they expect. He reached into his jacket, and for the first time, Hayes shifted, just slightly, a flicker of caution. Lauren's posture stiffened. "Sir, please keep your hands visible." Ethan paused, then slowly pulled out his phone. No sudden movements, no threat, just a device. "I'm documenting this," he said, raising it calmly, "for the record." A ripple moved through the cabin. Phones appeared now, not hidden, not hesitant, recording. Victoria's expression tightened. "Oh, please," she said under her breath, "this is unnecessary." Ethan ignored her. He angled the phone slightly, capturing Hayes, Lauren, the row, the seat. "My name is Ethan Brooks," he said clearly. "I am seated in first class, seat 2A, which I paid for. I've been asked to move despite presenting a valid boarding pass." Hayes's jaw flexed. "Sir, you need to stop recording." "I have the right to document this interaction," Ethan replied, calm, precise. Lauren stepped forward slightly. "Recording crew members without consent can violate airline policy." Ethan looked at her. "Then you might want to make sure your actions hold up on camera." That landed, hard. A man near the window lifted his own phone higher. "I'm recording too," he said. "This isn't right." Another voice followed. "Same here." The cabin was no longer silent. It was alive and shifting. Hayes felt it, the pressure, the witnesses, the narrative slipping out of his control. He took a step closer to Ethan, lowering his voice. "Sir, I'm going to say this one more time. Put the phone away and comply, or this escalates further." Ethan didn't lower the phone, didn't step back. "If this escalates," he said quietly, "that's on you." A beat, tight, electric. Then Hayes turned sharply toward the front of the cabin. "Call ground security," he said. Lauren hesitated, just for a second, long enough for everyone to see. Then she picked up the interphone. "Yes," she said, voice steady but thinner now. "We need security at the aircraft, first class."
Victoria leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly, like tension leaving her body. Ethan remained standing, still, unmoved. But inside, something had shifted. Because now this wasn't just a confrontation, it was a record, have consequences.
The heavy boots on the jet bridge. Not rushed, not chaotic. Controlled, official. Then 2 uniformed officers stepped into the cabin, their presence cutting through the tension like a blade. One tall, broad-shouldered, late 40s, the other younger, sharper, eyes scanning everything at once. They didn't speak immediately. They assessed. Captain Hayes moved toward them, voice low, measured, already shaping the narrative. Passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions, causing delay. Refusing. Delay. The words were chosen carefully. The older officer nodded once, then turned toward Ethan. "Sir," he said, calm but firm, "we're going to need you to come with us." Ethan didn't move. Not a step, not an inch. "I'm in my assigned seat," he said. "I've shown my ticket. I've done nothing wrong." The younger officer glanced at Hayes. "You verified the seat?" Hayes answered without hesitation. "There's a discrepancy. We need him off the aircraft to resolve it." Not a lie, but not the truth. Ethan felt it again, that quiet shift, facts bending just enough to justify action. "I'd like you to look at the boarding passes yourself," Ethan said, extending his phone slightly, then his printed pass. The older officer hesitated, then took it. 2A. Clear. He looked at Victoria's phone next. 3C. A brief silence followed. Small, but heavy. The younger officer's brow furrowed. "Sir, this shows—" Hayes cut in smoothly. "We've already reviewed that. The issue now is non-compliance." There it was again. Not wrong seat. Non-compliance. The frame had locked in. Ethan watched it happen in real time, the shift from truth to authority, from evidence to control. Behind him, voices rose. "That's his seat," a man said, louder now. "You saw the ticket," a woman added. "Why are you removing him?" Phones were up everywhere now, not hidden, not subtle, recording every second. The older officer handed the boarding pass back slowly, his expression tightening just slightly. "Sir," he said to Ethan, tone softer now, "I understand your position, but once the captain makes a call like this, we have to enforce it. Have to. Not want to, not agree with. Have to." Ethan nodded once. He understood exactly what that meant. "You're asking me to leave a seat I paid for," he said, "because he said so." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we can sort this out at the gate." "And what happens to my seat?" Ethan asked. No answer, because everyone already knew. Victoria would keep it. Victoria, who now sat perfectly still, hands folded lightly in her lap, watching the scene unfold with a quiet, contained satisfaction, not smiling, not speaking, just waiting. Ethan looked at her for the first time since the officers arrived, really looked, and for a brief second something flickered in her eyes. Not doubt, recognition, like she understood on some level that this moment wasn't ending here. Then it was gone, replaced by composure. The older officer stepped closer. "Sir, I need you to make a decision." Decision. Again, as if this was still a choice. Ethan lowered his phone slightly, but didn't turn it off. He looked around the cabin, at the faces, the witnesses, the people who had seen exactly what happened. A man gave him a small nod. A woman mouthed, "We saw everything." And that mattered, more than they realized. Ethan reached up slowly, pulling his bag from the overhead bin. The movement sent a ripple through the cabin. Not relief, not quite. Something else. Anticipation. Because this felt like surrender. But it wasn't. Ethan stepped into the aisle, standing tall, shoulders squared, presence unchanged. "I'll walk," he said calmly. "I'm not resisting." The older officer nodded. "We appreciate that." As Ethan moved forward, the cabin parted slightly, people leaning back, making space, phones tracking him as he passed. "This is wrong," someone said. "Get their names," another voice called out. Ethan stopped briefly near the front. He turned, looked directly at Hayes, at Lauren, at Victoria, memorizing, not their faces, their choices. Then he spoke, voice low but carrying through the entire cabin. This isn't over. No anger, no threat, just certainty. And for the first time, something shifted. Not in Ethan, in them. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a problem being removed. It felt like a mistake being made.
The cabin door closed behind him with a dull, final sound. Not loud, but absolute. Ethan stepped onto the jet bridge, the air cooler, quieter, stripped of the watching eyes and murmuring voices. For a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to a single corridor. Just him, the officers, the echo of footsteps. But the silence didn't last. Behind them, voices spilled out from the aircraft, raised, frustrated. One sharp voice cut through. "You can't do that to him." Another followed. "We have it on video." The door shut again, cutting it off, but the message lingered. The younger officer glanced back briefly, then forward again. His jaw tightened. "They're recording everything," he muttered under his breath. The older officer didn't respond. They walked, step by step, measured, controlled. Ethan matched their pace without resistance. His phone was still in his hand, screen dim but recording. He didn't look down at it. He didn't need to. At the end of the jet bridge, the terminal opened up again. Bright lights, movement, noise returning all at once. But something had already spread ahead of them. People were looking, not casually, directly. A small cluster had formed near the gate, phones already out, screens tense with curiosity, and something closer to outrage. "How fast did that travel?" the younger officer whispered. "Fast enough," Ethan said quietly. They stepped into the open space near the gate, and the reaction hit. "That's him, the guy from first class. They kicked him off?" Voices layered over each other, confusion, anger, disbelief. A woman stepped forward, holding her phone up. "Sir, is it true they removed you from your seat?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked past her, at the plane, still connected to the gate, still not moving, still waiting. Then he spoke, calm, steady, every word chosen. "I had a valid ticket. They saw it. They made a decision anyway." The crowd reacted instantly, a ripple, louder now. "That's insane! Which airline is this? Someone tag them." The younger officer shifted, uneasy. "We need to move, sir." But moving didn't change what was happening, because now it wasn't contained. It wasn't just inside a cabin. It was out, visible, spreading. Ethan turned slightly, facing the officers. "I'm not resisting," he said. "I'm cooperating, but I'm not disappearing." The older officer met his eyes. For the first time, there was something different there. Not authority, awareness. "I can see that," he said quietly. Behind them, more passengers had stepped off the plane. Not all, just enough. Enough to confirm. "That's him," one woman said, pointing. "He was sitting in that seat the whole time." "They made him move," a man added. "Captain didn't even listen." Phones lifted higher, angles adjusted. The story was building itself now. No script, no control. Lauren appeared at the aircraft door, standing just inside, watching, not stepping forward, not intervening, just watching. Ethan noticed her. Their eyes met for a brief second, and in that second her composure cracked, not visibly, but enough. Because now she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't ending at the gate. Captain Hayes didn't appear.
Victoria didn't appear. They stayed inside, protected by the illusion of distance. But distance doesn't stop momentum. Ethan's phone buzzed in his hand, once, then again, then continuously, notifications stacking, messages flooding, calls incoming. He glanced down briefly. Dozens of alerts, clips already circulating, angles from inside the cabin, voices, faces, evidence. The younger officer exhaled sharply. It's already online. Ethan looked up again, at the plane, at the gate, at the people watching. And then finally, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not relief, something colder, resolve. Because now the situation had changed. This was no longer about proving what happened. That part was done. Now it was about what came next. And somewhere inside that aircraft, people were still sitting in their seats, unaware that the ground beneath them had already started to move.
Inside the aircraft, the mood had changed. Not calmer, not resolved, heavier. Like something unseen had settled over every row, pressing down on conversations, tightening shoulders, slowing breath. The quiet wasn't comfortable anymore. It was watchful. Victoria Hale sat in seat 2A, still as ever, but no longer untouched by the moment. Her fingers rested on her armrest, but they weren't relaxed. A slight tension ran through them, barely visible unless you knew where to look. She glanced toward the front. Lauren was still near the galley, standing straighter than before, but her movements had lost their rhythm. The polish was there, the control, but underneath it, something had cracked. A passenger in row 3 leaned into the aisle. Are we really taking off like nothing just happened? No answer. Another voice, sharper. You removed the wrong person. Lauren stepped forward, forcing a smile that didn't land. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. We'll be departing shortly. Shortly. A word meant to close things. It didn't. Did you even check his ticket? The man pressed. Lauren hesitated. That hesitation spoke louder than anything she could say. Victoria shifted again, exhaling slowly. This is getting out of hand, she murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. It was a simple mix-up. Simple. A few heads turned toward her now. Different looks this time. Not agreement. Not quite. Recognition. The woman across the aisle leaned forward slightly. It wasn't a mix-up. You were in his seat. Victoria's eyes flicked toward her, sharp. Excuse me? You heard me, the woman said, steady. We all saw it. The air tightened. Lauren stepped in quickly. Ma'am, please remain seated. But control was slipping. Not loudly, not chaotically, just enough. At the front, Captain Hayes stood near the cockpit door, arms crossed, watching the cabin. His expression hadn't changed, still composed, still certain, but his eyes moved more now, tracking, calculating, because something wasn't right. He felt it. The delay had stretched longer than expected. The usual rhythm of pushback hadn't come. No final clearance, no movement, just waiting. A crew member approached him quietly, leaning in just enough to speak low. Captain, ground is holding us. Hayes frowned slightly. For what? They didn't say. That didn't happen, not without reason. Hayes' gaze shifted toward the jet bridge door, closed, still, but not neutral anymore. Behind it, something was building. Back in the cabin, a phone chimed, then another, then several. Passengers began checking their screens almost in unison, brows furrowed, eyes widening. What is this? Someone whispered. A man near the window turned his phone outward. It's already online. The video played. Ethan's voice, calm, clear, documenting everything. Lauren's face, Hayes' words, Victoria in the seat, every angle, every moment, captured, shared. A wave moved through the cabin. Not panic, Not chaos, something sharper, awareness. The woman in row 3 looked up slowly. They're trending. Another voice, louder now. This is everywhere. Lauren felt it hit before she saw it. Her hand tightened slightly around the edge of a seat as she pulled out her own device. One glance, that was all it took. Her breath caught, because it wasn't just a clip, it was a narrative, and it was already forming without them. Hayes stepped forward, his presence cutting through the rising noise. Everyone remained seated, he said, voice firm. But authority doesn't silence truth once it's been seen. A man stood halfway up. You need to fix this. Another followed. Bring him back. Victoria sat frozen for a brief second. Then, slowly, she turned her gaze forward again. But this time, she didn't look certain. And at the front of the plane, for the first time since this began, Captain Hayes felt something he hadn't expected. Not doubt, something worse. The realization that the situation was no longer under his control. And somewhere just outside that aircraft, the man they removed was no longer just a passenger. He was becoming something else.
The call came through before the plane ever left the gate, not to the cabin, not to the passengers, to the people who actually ran the airline. In a quiet office 3 terminals away, a senior operations manager stared at a screen filled with live feeds, social media spikes, and internal alerts stacking faster than they could be read. The video had already crossed hundreds of thousands of views. The company name was trending, not in praise, not even in criticism, in exposure. He picked up the phone with a hand that wasn't steady anymore. Get me the captain, now. Back on the aircraft, Captain Hayes' radio crackled. Flight 472, hold position. Do not depart. His jaw tightened. We're ready for pushback. Negative, the voice replied. You are to remain at the gate until further notice. A pause. Then quieter. And Captain, we need you off the aircraft. That landed. Hard. The cabin didn't hear the words, but they felt the shift. Hayes stood still for a moment, then turned towards Lauren. You're in charge here. Her eyes widened. Sir? I'll be back. But even as he said it, something in his tone had changed, because for the first time, he wasn't in control of the outcome. He stepped off the plane and walked straight into the storm waiting outside. At the gate, the crowd had doubled, phones raised, voices louder, screens glowing with the same video playing over and over again. Ethan stood at the center of it, not speaking, not moving much, just present. The kind of presence that didn't need volume to command attention. When Hayes approached, the noise shifted. Cameras turned, focus locked. There was no aisle to control here, no cabin rules to lean on, just truth. You're Ethan Brooks, the operations manager said as he pushed through the crowd, slightly out of breath. Ethan met his eyes, calm, unshaken. Yes, a beat. Recognition hit. Not from the clothes, not from the situation, from somewhere deeper. The manager swallowed. You own enough, Ethan said quietly. Not dismissive, final. The man nodded quickly, understanding more than was spoken. Around them, the cameras caught everything. Hayes stopped a few feet away. For the first time since this began, he looked at Ethan without authority, just realization. You should have checked the ticket, Ethan said. Not angry, not loud, but it carried weight that filled the space. Hayes didn't respond immediately. His posture shifted, the confidence replaced by something tighter, smaller. I made a judgment call, he said finally. Ethan held his gaze. You made a choice. Silence followed, because that was the truth no one could argue. Behind them, Lauren had stepped off the plane now, her face pale, her movements slower, uncertain. Victoria appeared in the doorway too, but she didn't step forward. She stayed there, watching, her earlier certainty gone, replaced by something close to regret. Too late. The operations manager cleared his throat. Mr. Brooks, we're prepared to make this right, immediately, whatever you need. Ethan didn't look at him. His attention stayed on Hayes, on Lauren, on the people who had decided who he was without ever asking. This isn't about a seat, he said, and everyone listening felt it, because they knew he was right.
It's about how easy it was for all of you to believe I didn't belong in it. No one spoke. No one could. The weight of it settled over the entire space, heavier than anything that had happened inside that cabin. Ethan stepped back slightly, the moment shifting with him. Not retreating, reclaiming. "I'll take another flight," he said, "on a different airline." The words hit like a verdict, final, irreversible. The operations manager nodded quickly, already issuing quiet, urgent instructions, damage control. Too late. Ethan picked up his bag and walked. Not rushed, not dramatic, just done. Behind him, the noise didn't fade. It grew. Cameras, voices, headlines forming in real time. But none of it followed him, because he didn't need it to. The truth had already moved faster than any plane that day. And inside that aircraft, every person who had watched it unfold would carry the same quiet understanding. Some decisions don't stay in the moment. They follow you. If this story made you feel something, stay with it. Like the video, subscribe for more, and comment 3 words: "Do better now."